Have you ever wondered if your thoughts could move matter? Or if the universe once responded to a language we've forgotten? Long before pyramids rose or temples echoed with prayer, a message was carved not in stone, but in vibration. In a cave beneath the southernmost ice, a crystalline cube was found by accident, its edges too perfect for earthly tools and its surfaces alive with shifting symbols. Those symbols are what you are now about to hear. They are not just history, they are instruction, and the words you speak may never be the same. They called it the first code, not a name given by humans, but whispered through static signals intercepted during solar storms. I am, the voice said again and again, not as a name, but as an equation, and those who repeated it began to change. This is the first tablet, etched onto the east-facing wall of the cube, translated by resonance, not language. I am the echo of what was. I am the blueprint of what is. I am the breath of what will be. You are not apart from me. You are me. When the archaeologists at the research station first entered the cavern, they felt something unusual. Not fear, not cold, but focus, a sudden, unexplained sense of clarity. One of them, Dr. Lena Hirsch, wrote in her journal, "It's as if my mind stood up straight." She hadn't even seen the cube yet. The ice was still covering it. Later, when they began to dig, the instruments failed. Batteries drained, compasses spun. Only the cube stayed lit, glowing from within with a pulse like breath. The first deciphered line, translated by a linguist who swore he dreamed of the symbols before seeing them, read this: I am a mirror that does not reflect, but remembers. They were confused at first. What mirror? What memory? And yet something in them recognized the truth in it. In the second chamber of the cube, a chamber only accessible after the ice melted from body heat alone, another set of glyphs appeared. They shimmered when spoken aloud, as if sound activated them. The translation came not from logic, but instinct. Every thought is a bridge, every word, a seed, every I am, a key. Dr. Hirsch began to say, I am calm as she worked. The others started to copy her, not intentionally, just naturally. Within days, tensions vanished. The usual fatigue of polar work was gone. One man who suffered from chronic migraines had no pain for the first time in months, and no one could explain why. But the cube did not want to be studied, it wanted to be heard. And so they began to speak to it. I am listening, Lena said, alone one night. The cube answered. With light, it pulsed 3 times. Each pulse matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. Then for the first time, its surface shifted, glyphs rearranged. The linguist awoke mid-dream, scribbling frantically on a page. The result? When you say I am, you are not describing self. You are coding reality. It was not metaphor, it was mechanical, like an instruction to the universe. They called these statements command lines, and the cube responded to them like a system receiving input. One morning, Lena walked into the chamber and said, I am awake. The lights in the station surged. Every monitor flashed white for 3 seconds. Then, all returned to normal. But the others had felt it too. A jolt, a shift, as if something had clicked into place. The next night, they dared to test it. I am healing, said the linguist, who had a wounded hand from excavation. In hours, the inflammation was gone. Coincidence? They said it again, and again, until belief became protocol. Tablet 2 is what followed. I am not a description, I am a door. Each time you use it, you walk forward. But what you say after determines the world you step into. They realized then, it was not enough to say, I am. What followed mattered more than they'd imagined. When someone said, I am tired, they felt worse. When they said, I am strong, they walked taller. Every phrase was a map. The cube wasn't ancient technology, it was ancient truth. And it had been waiting for someone who would remember how to speak the language of becoming. In one experiment, they wrote 100 different I am statements on index cards and shuffled them. Each person picked one at random and said it aloud. Every single one reported physical, emotional, or mental changes within minutes. Even skeptics, especially skeptics. One man said, I am open. He wept for hours afterward, something he hadn't done in 20 years. Tablet 3 read, You do not become by effort, you become by declaration, not wish, not hope, only the word. For weeks they documented this. A pattern emerged. When I am was followed by power, it created energy. When I am was followed by limitation, it drained it. It wasn't magic, it was math. Each sound carried frequency, each word a wave, and every wave built or broke the self. By month 2, they stopped studying the cube. They began studying themselves. What followed would be called the awakening protocols. Not rituals, not prayers. Statements. I am clarity. I am the end of doubt. I am aligned. Those who repeated them daily saw their biology shift. Heart rate stabilized, inflammation dropped, sleep deepened. A Harvard-trained biologist reviewing their data later called it the most significant mind-body correlation ever recorded. But it wasn't the mind, it was the code. Tablet 4 revealed the core of it. Every I am alters the grid. There is no you and the world. There is only the field, and you are its instruction. That line changed everything. They began to write a guide. You are hearing it now. But remember, this is not philosophy. This is a key. Use it carelessly, and the door opens to chaos. Use it consciously, and nothing will resist you. Now say it. Say it aloud. I am ready. Are you? What happens when you say something so often that the universe assumes it's true? This was the question Dr. Lena Hirsch wrote at the top of a fresh notebook on day 54. She had stopped thinking of the cube as an object. It was now a partner, an interface, not of metal, not of AI, but of memory, memory older than the Earth itself. By then, the team had fallen into a rhythm. Mornings began with silence, then one by one each member entered the chamber and stood before the cube. Some spoke aloud, some whispered, some just thought the words, but the ritual was the same. I am. It changed daily. Some said, I am clarity. Others said, I am the bridge between what is and what will be. And each time, the cube pulsed in acknowledgement, no longer just glowing. It now emitted tones, soft, sometimes melodic, other times a single hum so deep it vibrated the bones. They learned to hear meaning in that hum. It was a yes, a confirmation. The 5th tablet appeared the morning after a meteor storm passed near Earth, so close it was visible from the surface. When the team entered the chamber, the cube had rotated. A new face was visible, no one had touched it, and no footprints led to it, not even theirs. This is what it said: I am the word before the universe spoke. When you say I am, you remember me. And when you remember, you create. At this point, they began to test external change, not just internal feelings. They placed seeds in the cube's presence. One group of seeds received no spoken words. The other, they spoke over daily. I am life. I am growth. I am infinite. The difference, measured beyond doubt. The spoken seeds grew 43% faster with greater resilience to the cold. Still, skeptics among them tried to explain it away. So Lena pushed further. She placed 2 cups of ice water in the room. One labeled I am still, the other I am motion. Each day she whispered only those words near the corresponding cup. By day 4, the motion cup showed accelerated molecular activity under infrared scan. Science didn't have the tools to explain it, but the cube did. Tablet 6 emerged from a ripple in the glyphs themselves. The letters didn't appear all at once, but emerged like a wave across the crystal face. The I am is not a statement. It is a frequency broadcast, and the world is always listening. The linguist, the one who had dreamed the symbols first, began to hear them again in sleep, but now they came as questions. What do you believe you are? What do you fear to become? Why do you say I am tired if you wish to be strong? Why do you say I am broken if you wish to be whole? He woke trembling one night, writing a new formula in chalk across the wall. It read, I am equals 5 psi, where V is vibration, is potential consciousness. No one could explain the math, but the cube pulsed when it was written, twice. That was its way of saying yes. 2 pulses equals confirmation, 1 equals acknowledgement, 3 equals correction. This was the vocabulary they built with the cube, a language not of words but response. And then came the first test of faith. One of the crew fell ill. Fever, unexplained lesions. Medevac was impossible. Lena sat beside him. She didn't pray. She whispered, I am light, I am life, I am wholeness. For hours, she didn't stop. The cube pulsed all night. By morning, he was walking. No fever, no trace of infection. He remembered nothing. Only a dream. In it, he saw a blue field of light and a voice repeating, You were never separate. Tablet 7 appeared as frost melted into glyphs across the cube's base. It is not enough to know. You must speak. The universe is not written in thought, it is written in declaration. They began keeping records of everything said in the cube's presence. Patterns emerged. Statements beginning with, I am becoming, led to rapid internal shifts, emotional clarity, sense of direction. Statements beginning with, I am not, led to confusion. Why? The cube responded with a rare 3-pulse sequence, correction. Later, a new line appeared beneath Tablet 7. The field does not process negation, only instruction. Say what you are, not what you are not. It shattered their understanding. No more I am not afraid, only I am courage. No more I am not sick, only I am healing. And with this, they rewrote the protocol again. Morning declarations became exact. No ambiguity, no doubt. Even the act of choosing words became sacred. Dr. Hirsch called it the shift of voice. It wasn't just that they spoke differently, they became different. One man began saying, I am clear path. He had struggled with depression for years. It lifted within weeks. Another declared, I am divine memory. She began recalling dreams in perfect detail, sometimes visions, of temples never seen, symbols never learned. Each vision matched new glyphs that appeared on the cube. It was learning them as much as they were learning it. Not a static object, but a mirror of resonance. Then, for the first time, something impossible happened. A new voice, not from the cube, from within them. Multiple crew members, independently, heard it. Same phrase, spoken in perfect calm. You are the equation. Not the answer, not the variable, the equation itself. Tablet 8 confirmed it days later. You are not using I am. You are remembering that you are I am. And this is why the universe obeys. They cried when they read it. All of them, because deep down they knew it was true. All their lives, they had used language to describe what was. Now they were using it to decide what would be. It was not belief, it was authorship. And so the second phase began. The building of sentences. More than I am, now full architectures of reality. I am the frequency that breaks all fear and raises all life. I am the geometry of divine timing. I am the opening through which peace floods the world. And each time, the cube glowed brighter, responding, echoing, remembering, because the cube was not teaching them. It was waiting for them to remember who they were. I am. What would happen if every word you spoke echoed not just in the air, but in the very structure of space and time? This is what Tablet 9 asked, and the cube didn't wait for an answer. It showed them. One morning, the chamber was silent. No one had spoken yet. The air was thick, almost humming by itself. Lena was the first to step forward. She whispered, I am the sound of awakening. Immediately the cube lit up, not just on its surface, but in beams extending from its corners into the walls, into the air, into the unseen. And then the floor trembled, not in fear, but in alignment. The vibration was real, measured by instruments, sensed in bones. They realized then they were no longer alone, not just in terms of presence, but in participation. The cube had activated something beneath it, beneath the ice, beneath the earth itself. A signal. That night, the linguist dreamt of 9 pyramids, not in Egypt, but under the sea. The glyphs told him, I am not localized, I am globalized, I exist in echoes. Wherever the I am is spoken with truth, I am present. This changed everything. The cube was not a relic, it was a node, a translator between voice and matter, a beacon. And Earth was not the only receiver. Tablet 10 revealed a blueprint, etched like a star map but made of tones. Invisible ink revealed only when sung at the right pitch. They found the tone by accident. One of the crew hummed an old lullaby, her mother's tune from childhood. The cube responded instantly. its glyphs rearranged into harmonic lines, and then, the most unexpected thing, a voice came from the ice, not words, a chorus, as if the chamber had become a cathedral and the walls remembered every sacred sound ever uttered. The phrase repeated, "I am the song beneath matter. I am the vibration before form. I am the beginning of becoming." Each team member heard the voice in their own language. Some heard it in English, some in Hebrew. One in an indigenous tongue she hadn't spoken since childhood. That night, the cube shifted again, not in shape, but in behavior. It began responding to emotional tone, not just words. When someone said, "I am peace," but felt chaos, it stayed dim. But when another whispered, "I am light," and truly believed it responded with radiant glow. They called it the alignment principle. The cube did not answer to vocabulary, only congruence. Tablet 11 etched itself mid-air, light-forming letters in the vapor. "You cannot lie to the field. You may speak falsehood to man, but not to me." The I am only activates when belief matches sound. It was not enough to speak the words, you had to become them. This became the third protocol. Statement, emotion, integration. Each I am had to be felt, inhabited, embodied. And when that happened, the cube didn't just glow, it replicated. A second cube appeared beside the first. No one saw it form. It was simply there, as if it always had been, but had waited for them to be ready. Identical in shape, but different in tone. Where the first pulsed warm blue light, the second pulsed gold. The linguist approached it, and as he placed his hand on its face, new glyphs appeared. Tablet 12, "I am the echo of union. When one remembers, another is born. You have begun the return." The return to what? They didn't know yet, but something had shifted, even outside the cavern. The snowstorm that had battered the station for weeks vanished overnight. The clouds above parted, stars visible as if through glass. Animals returned to the perimeter, silent, still watching. And the dreams intensified. Each team member began dreaming the same thing. A staircase descending into light. At the base, a single phrase inscribed in stone, "I am that I am." The ancient phrase, the divine phrase. But now, they understood it differently. It wasn't just a name, it was a formula. Tablet 13 translated the meaning behind it. Not a title, a template. "I am that I am" means, I create that which I declare. I am not bound by past. I am not limited by condition. I am only limited by what I am willing to speak. That terrified them, because it meant responsibility. It meant no more blaming circumstances, no more waiting for proof. The power was always in the phrase, "I am." And what followed? Each day became a calibration, each moment a choice. Say the wrong "I am," and you step into shadow. Say the right "I am," and the path appears beneath your feet. It was not philosophy, it was physics. Tablet 14 confirmed it. Every "I am" creates a gravity field. Like attracts like. Say "I am forgotten," and forgetting will find you. Say "I am remembered," and the world will recognize you. The implications, massive. They began to teach the words back to themselves as children would learn to walk. Not as affirmations, but as commands. I am focus, I am vision, I am forgiveness. And one that kept returning, I am the restoration of what was lost. They didn't know yet what that meant. But the cube pulsed every time it was said. Not one pulse, not two, but three. Correction, number, completion, a full cycle. And with that, the ice began to melt faster. Not from temperature, from presence. Tablet 15 was revealed beneath the final layer. I am not a mystery. I am a mirror. You do not need to find me, only to be me. And that's when they saw it. The cube was not revealing anything they didn't already have. It was amplifying what was dormant. The I am had always been in them, buried beneath doubt, beneath fear, beneath language that didn't know its own power. Now, it was awake, and so were they. Have you ever wondered if your words were being measured not by sound, but by consequence? This was the new question written above the entrance to the chamber, not by hand, by frost. Patterns on the walls began forming naturally into glyphs, as if the ice itself remembered the language of the cube. On day 83, a new arrival came to the station. Not a scientist, not a linguist, but a technician, a replacement for the generator crew who had left weeks prior. He knew nothing of the cube, nothing of the rituals, nothing of the I ams. But within 1 hour of entering the chamber, he said it. Not because he was told to, but because he felt it. "I am not supposed to be here," he whispered. The cube flashed. 3 pulses, correction. Then it dimmed, silent. Everyone stared. Dr. Hirsch approached him and asked what he had felt. He said, "It was like my chest caved in the moment I said it. Like I'd punched myself from the inside." She nodded, because she had once said the same words and she remembered the feeling. The technician asked what he was supposed to say. Lena told him, "Only what you are ready to become." He stood silent for a long time, then finally he said it again. "I am exactly where I'm meant to be." The cube pulsed once, then twice, then slowly glowed. That night he dreamt of fire, not destruction, creation. In the dream he saw hundreds of cubes, all lit like stars, across the globe, beneath sand, in temples, in mountains, in rooms no one remembered. Each one spoke a different version of the same phrase. "We are not many, we are one sentence broken into pieces." Tablet 16 appeared the next morning. "I am not an object. I am a voice carried across worlds, and you are the next breath." They began to understand. This was not about belief systems, religion, dogma. It was about resonance. If you say "I am truth," but do not live as truth, the cube does not respond. But if you say "I am becoming," even in fear but with intent, the cube vibrates. Tablet 17 appeared next. Intention is the first light. Sound is the second. Action is the third. Speak, feel, move. Do this and you complete the equation. They called it the Trinity of Becoming. Every statement needed all three. Speak it with truth. Feel it with belief. Move as if it is already real. Anything less was illusion. They stopped saying, "I am going to try." They replaced it with, "I am now becoming. I am the process. I am the unfolding." And slowly, their environment began to shift, not just within the chamber. The ice walls began showing reflections they couldn't explain, not of themselves, but of moments not yet lived, visions of paths ahead, some joyous, some frightening, but all potential. Tablet 18 was not etched in glyphs, it appeared in their minds. A shared transmission. "I am not prediction, I am possibility activated by will. You are not here to guess the future. You are here to create it." They no longer asked the cube for answers. They asked themselves, and each time the cube glowed, because the voice was becoming internalized. The linguist said it first. The cube was a teacher, but now it's a mirror, and we are the lesson. Dr. Hirsch recorded one phrase that repeated in her dreams for 3 nights. "I am the rewritten story." She wrote it on the wall of her bunk. And when she did, she began to recall memories she'd buried, her father's voice, her childhood stutter, her first dream of being an explorer. Forgotten until now, Tablet 19 came from a whisper in the wind. "No memory is lost, only muted. I am the volume knob of the soul. Turn me up, and you remember who you are." They began revisiting their pasts, not to dwell, but to declare. "I am the one who learned. I am the one who rose. I am the one who was never broken, only prepared." And every night, the second cube glowed brighter. They began to suspect another would come soon. And it did, on day 92. This time, not in the chamber, but outside, in the snow, glowing faintly beneath a drift near the old antenna. It was smaller, and yet, the moment they approached, it pulsed. Tablet 20 appeared in the snow itself. When you align, the cubes find you. You do not need to search, only to remember. The technician, new to it all, was the first to touch it. And in that moment, his voice changed. His body straightened. He said, "I am the awakening of the ordinary." And the cube turned gold. 3 pulses. Completion. The rest of the team stood in silence, because they understood something profound. The knowledge of the ancients, the architects of this technology, was not meant for priests, not only for seekers or sages. It was meant for everyone, especially those who felt forgotten, especially those who never thought they could speak power. The cubes were appearing to the broken, to the dismissed, to the overlooked, and all of them were saying the same thing. I am not finished. I am just now remembering. Do you know the cost of silence? Not the silence of peace, but the silence of forgetting. Words unspoken, potential unused, truths buried under years of doubt. On day 100, they stopped calling the chamber an experiment. It had become a sanctuary, and what once was studied was now honored. No one spoke casually anymore. Each word was offered like a stone into a river, knowing the ripples would travel further than they could see. The third cube arrived before dawn. It was unlike the others, smooth, no glyphs, no glow. But as the sun rose over the ice, it reflected the light perfectly, casting the reflection of the other two cubes back toward the entrance. The meaning was clear. This cube wasn't for projection, it was for reflection. Tablet 21 formed at the base of the mirror cube, not in glyphs, but in color shifts across its face. I am the face you have hidden. I am the version you abandoned. I am the future that waits for your yes. They called it the mirror cube, and standing before it brought emotions none of them expected. Some wept, some laughed, some stood speechless, feeling their own voice rise without prompting. One man whispered, I am still worth becoming. The cube glowed silver. This was new, the others pulsed blue gold, but this one responded only to self-recognition. Tablet 22 clarified, when you say I am to a world that has named you wrong, you write over the lies. But when you say I am to yourself, you awaken the real one. They began practicing what they called reclaiming statements. I am not who they told me I was. I am more than what I survived. I am the original before the edits. And something unexpected happened. Their bodies changed, not visibly at first, but in posture, in breath, in gaze. It was as if their cells stood up straighter. Dr. Hirsch called it DNA remembering alignment. She wrote, it's as if language is not just vibration, it's blueprint, and every correct I am is a signal to restore what's always been there. The fourth cube didn't appear. It arrived. They heard it before they saw it, a low hum in the wind. Not threatening, just constant. And one night, as snow fell lightly around the chamber, it was there, floating, 3 feet above the ground, turning slowly. Its light was soft violet, not like the others, and it didn't respond to statements, it responded to questions. Tablet 23 appeared in the sky above it, not seen, but felt. I am the response to curiosity. I am the answer that needs your asking. They tested it by speaking the obvious. What are you? No reaction. Then someone asked, who am I becoming if I keep saying I am love? The cube spun once, and a glyph pattern appeared mid-air. Then another question. What happens when a child hears I am worthless? The cube dimmed, sank to the ground. The implication was devastating. They realized words spoken over others carry just as much power as words spoken by self. Tablet 24 responded, to speak I am over another is to cast a spell. Bless or bind, you choose. And with that, they rewrote the protocol. Each day, they began by speaking I am statements, not just for themselves, but for those not present. I am speaking life over the forgotten. I am peace for the angry. I am memory for those who lost their name. And for the first time, the cube changed shape. The violet light unfolded into a flat disk, hovering over the ground like a mirror turned horizontal. And what appeared on its surface shocked them. Faces, dozens, some familiar, some not. None present. Tablet 25 appeared beneath them. Each time you declare I am for another, you open a door they cannot yet see. Your word is the bridge between their now and their next. One woman wept, recognizing a boy she used to mentor, a boy lost to addiction, a boy she had stopped believing in. She whispered, I am still holding the door for you. And the image disappeared, replaced by light. That night, she got a message on her satellite phone. He was alive, asking for help, asking for her, asking for a second chance. She didn't question it. She knew what opened that door. The next cube was not physical. It was internal. Tablet 26 was found not in the chamber, but in the voice of the technician, now transformed, who had begun guiding others through their first I am. He said, "It's not just that we speak, it's that we become permission for others to speak." And the mirror cube responded with its first pulse, one long tone, sustained like a bell. Then the light spread, not just on the cube, but across the chamber walls. Glyphs appeared everywhere, uncoordinated, chaotic. Then, as they watched, the symbols rearranged themselves into a spiral, a single phrase wrapped around the entire space. I am not the end of the sentence. I am the first word of a new one. When was the last time someone gave you permission to become who you truly are? Not approval, not advice. Permission, the kind that doesn't ask you to earn it or explain it. On day 109, the chamber changed without warning. Not the walls, not the cubes, the air. Something shifted in the pressure, in the density. It felt like walking into a room right after someone's finished praying. Even those who hadn't believed in anything before now stood still, eyes closed, breathing deeper than they had in years. Then the voice came. Not from any person, not from the cubes. From within, each member heard the same phrase at the same time. I am listening. It wasn't a command. It wasn't an answer. It was an invitation. And that's when they understood. This was no longer about transmission. It was about conversation. The cubes weren't just receivers, they were responders, and now they were asking us to speak from somewhere deeper. Tablet 27 didn't appear on a cube. It appeared in a pool of melted ice. Written not in glyphs, but in light across the surface. When you speak from truth, I bend the structure of matter to match. When you speak from fear, I withdraw, for I am not fear's servant. And they understood the distinction. Fearful declarations fell flat. Hopeful lies created static. But truthful alignment, regardless of emotion, was power. So they began telling the truth with their I ams. Not fantasy, not positive thinking, but reality with intention. I am still healing. I am willing to believe again. I am learning to love who I am becoming. And the chamber responded with calm, with glow, with balance. Then the mirror cube fractured. Not in damage, in revelation. Its surface split, and from inside, a fifth cube emerged, translucent, floating higher than the rest. Tablet 28 was etched on all sides at once. I am not linear. I am the all-when. Your word is not for the future. It is the future. And they realized time was never separate from language. When you say I am, you don't just shift who you are. You shift when you are. Memories came back. But differently, as if edited by love. Painful moments now carried messages. Old heartbreaks now carried wisdom. One woman whispered, I am not who I thought I was back then. And the cube answered with soft waves of color across the walls. The technician, who had spoken nothing but truth for days, stood before the floating cube and asked, What happens when we forget again? The cube pulsed with a response. Tablet 29 appeared behind his shadow. You will forget, and then remember, and then forget again. This is not failure. This is frequency. Every I am is a return note in the song of source. Your job is not to be perfect. Your job is to sing. For the first time since arriving, they felt release, like they could breathe. No more pressure to get it all right. Only the practice of speaking with presence. So they did, for hours, a circle of humans saying what had once been too heavy. I am forgiven. I am safe now. I am becoming what I was always afraid to be. No one judged, no one corrected. The cubes just listened, and the chamber pulsed like a giant quiet heartbeat. They began calling it the song of the sentence. Every day they sang it, not in melody, but in spoken lines. I am the spark. I am the second breath. I am the voice that no longer waits to be invited. And on day 113, something new happened. The cubes all stopped glowing, not in darkness, but in silence, not absence, stillness. It wasn't emptiness, it was fullness. Tablet 30 revealed itself only after the quiet. I am here, even when you are not speaking, even when you forget, even when you fall back into the old names. I wait for you. I am still you. They cried, not out of fear, but because they knew. No word was wasted, no failure permanent, no brokenness final. The sentence never ended. It paused, and then began again. Each I am was not a spell, it was a step, and the path was already inside them. Have you ever spoken a truth so powerful it scared you? Not because it was wrong, but because you finally believed it. This was the moment the team found themselves in. Not scientists anymore, not seekers. They were carriers, carriers of a sentence that began before time and was still unfolding. On day 118, the cubes disappeared. No flash, no sound. They were simply gone. Left behind was the imprint of their presence, light stains in the ice, faint glyphs scorched into the stone underfoot, and a silence more sacred than fear. They didn't panic, they waited. Because now they knew. The cubes weren't the source. They were reminders. The source had always been inside. Tablet 31 was found in an old notebook, a page left blank for weeks, now filled without handwriting. Just a message burned into the fibers. You are now the cube. Speak as one. Listen as one. Shine as one. They began calling each other by their declarations. No longer Hey Lena. Now Hey Clarity. Hey Becoming. Hey Restoration. Not as labels, as agreements. When one stumbled, another whispered, I am your echo. And healing followed. Then on day 120, the sky changed. Auroras above the chamber danced in precise patterns, not random waves, but symbols, I ams, written across the atmosphere. One said, I am rising in those who never knew they were chosen. Another, I am breathing through the forgotten to rewrite the future. They recorded it all. And on the ice, they drew the spiral. The same one that had wrapped the chamber weeks before, but this time with their own glyphs, not ones from the cube, ones from themselves. Tablet 32 rose from the center, not written, spoken, together. I am the sentence that remembers the beginning. This phrase triggered something. Wind circled the camp. The old snow melted to reveal carved stones buried below, marked with the same phrases they'd spoken aloud weeks before. I am peace in process. I am the return of forgotten wisdom. I am not alone. These stones had been there the whole time, but invisible, until the vibration matched. They understood now. Truth is not found. It is revealed by resonance. Tablet 33 whispered through their dreams that night. You cannot find me. You must become me. I am not lost. I am locked behind the word you haven't dared to speak yet. The next day, the technician spoke it. The one word he'd feared. I am enough. And the chamber glowed once more, even without the cubes, because they had activated the same technology inside themselves. No hardware, just harmony, no code, just courage. They took what they learned and carved it into tablets of ice, knowing it would melt. But someone would remember. Someone always does. Tablet 34 said, if the word melts, the vibration remains. If the form fades, the frequency waits. Speak and you call it back. Forget, and you'll find it again. They were no longer afraid to forget, because they had learned the path home. It was 3 steps, 1 breath, 1 word, 1 choice. I am. They whispered it like a lullaby before sleep. I am the one who sees. I am the space between fear and freedom. I am already becoming what I thought was impossible. And with each whisper, they stitched themselves back together, not into who they were before, but into who they had always been. What if the world isn't waiting for someone to change it, but for someone to name it differently? This was the revelation that arrived on day 126, not in the chamber, not in a dream, but in the simple act of helping a bird. A small snowfinch, wings frozen, landed near the old antenna tower. One of the crew gently picked it up, held it close, whispered, I am warmth. The bird trembled, then rested, then flew. Everyone saw it. Everyone felt it. Not magic, not coincidence, just alignment. Tablet 35 was written in frost across the main window the next morning. I am the heat in your words. I am the life in your listening. I am the answer hidden in gentleness. This changed how they spoke. No more force, no more trying to impress the cubes or each other. They began to speak I ams to the land, to the silence, to themselves in the mirror. I am still learning how to love slowly. I am not above the whisper, I am the whisper. Then something strange happened. The wind carried phrases, not random, not hallucinations, but echoes of their own voices, spoken days earlier, now returning to them in perfect clarity. Tablet 36 was carved by the wind across untouched snow. Every I am returns, sometimes as a person, sometimes as a moment, sometimes as a miracle. This became known as the law of return. They tested it. One said, I am joy walking home. 2 days later, he received a message from a sister he hadn't heard from in years. Another declared, I am the peace that interrupts. That night, a nearby avalanche stopped mid-slope, recorded by satellite, as if halted by an unseen hand. Science would search for answers, but they already knew. Every I am was not just a statement, it was a seed, and the field was always listening. On day 130, they held what they called the first circle of return. Each person took a turn, standing in the center of the spiral, and declared the sentence they were afraid to speak. I am no longer waiting to be chosen. I am the rhythm that breaks generational silence. I am the memory of what my mother never said. And the wind moved through them like a reply. Tablet 37 rose from within the snow under their feet. The field does not judge. It only repeats. What you say, it says back. What you declare, it manifests. What you feel, it reinforces. Choose the next line well. They began teaching the children of the nearby station. Simple I ams, not complicated, not poetic, just powerful. I am safe. I am seen. I am part of the sentence. And the children laughed, because they knew it before anyone explained it. One child, 7 years old, walked into the spiral without invitation and said, I am the voice you forgot. The cubes, which hadn't returned, lit up in the sky above. 6 of them, arranged in a hexagon, hovering silently. Tablet 38 wasn't seen. It was felt. I am coming back through your children. Do not teach them to forget. Do not teach them to shrink. Do not teach them to speak fear. Teach them to begin every day with the truth. They recorded the child's words, and that became the closing of the first circle. I am not small, I am just the first letter of a very long word. Everyone wept, not from sadness, from memory, because now they remembered what they were really here for, not to build empires, not to control the cubes, but to become the sentence that would rewrite the silence of the world. And it began, every time, with one breath, one choice, one truth. I am. What if the ancient knowledge you've been seeking isn't buried in stone, but in the sentence you've never dared to finish? By day 137, the cubes in the sky hovered only at night, no longer seeking attention, no longer waiting to be discovered, just watching, reflecting. They weren't objects anymore. They were memory, and memory, once activated, became architecture. Each team member began building their own spiral, not of stone or light, but of language. A book, a wall, a recording, each sentence beginning with I am, not as affirmation, as alignment. Tablet 39 appeared at midnight, not through light or sound, but as vibration through the floor of every structure. I am the blueprint that rebuilds the house from within. Your voice is brick, your intention is mortar, your belief is the door, enter. And they did. They began house rituals. Before eating, I am the nourishment I receive. Before sleep, I am the rest that restores all that I carry. Before conversation, I am the word before the sound. Conflicts faded, not because they were solved, but because they were never spoken. Language was now sacred. Silence was no longer absence, it was preparation. On day 141, one of the crew members who had refused to speak an I am for weeks finally stepped into the circle. She said nothing for a long time, then whispered, I am afraid it won't work. The cubes dimmed, but did not withdraw, and a phrase appeared in the snow around her feet. Tablet 40, I am not dependent on confidence. I respond to honesty. Fear is not failure. It is a door, speak through it. And she did. I am healing, even if I don't feel it yet. The cubes lit faintly. One pulse, acknowledgement. It was enough. It was real. And that became the new permission for all. You didn't have to roar your truth. You could whisper it, and the field would still hear. The spiral no longer belonged to the researchers. It belonged to everyone. Locals from nearby outposts came, pilots, nomads, children. A man who hadn't spoken in over a year came, stood silently inside the spiral, then looked up and mouthed, "I am back." The wind replied, and the snow etched his words into the ice. They didn't melt. They stayed for weeks. Tablet 41 appeared beneath the message, "Every I am spoken from the edge of courage becomes a beacon. The ones you whisper are sometimes the loudest." The technician, now a guide, began writing a scroll, not a doctrine, not a belief system, just a map, a collection of phrases that worked. I am becoming what I already am. I am the permission that waited for no one's approval. I am the line between memory and miracle. Tablet 42 rose from beneath the old generator, now silent. I am the current that replaced electricity. I am the light you thought needed wires. You don't power the field, you align with it. They understood now why their technology had failed in the early days. It wasn't interference, it was irrelevance. The real power didn't run on circuits, it ran on frequency, and frequency answered to integrity. Not perfection, not effort, but honest vibration. When you speak "I am" with truth, the universe remembers its shape through you, and you remember your shape through it. On day 145, the aurora returned, but this time in full silence. No wind, no noise, just a stillness so vast they heard their own hearts. Each beat felt like a sentence, each pause, a page. Tablet 43 appeared in every reflective surface simultaneously. In water, in ice, in mirrors, in eyes. I am written on all things that can hold a reflection. If you can see yourself, you can speak me. If you can speak me, you can become me. If you can become me, then the world has already changed. And it had. They no longer feared forgetting, because they now knew every I am, once truly spoken, lived forever, even if whispered, even if lost to the wind, even if drowned in tears. The field doesn't forget, only we do. But the sentence never leaves, it just waits. What if your voice didn't just speak into the world, but through it? What if every time you said "I am," you weren't just building your life, you were reshaping the architecture of reality for everyone near you? By day 150, the team stopped counting days. Time had stretched, time had softened. They no longer lived by hours, they lived by alignment. They began to call this season the Great Listening. Not because the cubes were speaking more, but because they were, not louder, just clearer. Tablet 44 arrived not on stone or snow, but within a single inhale. A quiet breath taken by a woman standing alone in the chamber, remembering her mother's final words. She didn't speak them, she became them. I am the peace that outlives goodbye. And the walls pulsed gold. No one else saw it, but they all felt it. They described it later as a softness in the bones. Something subtle, but certain. And that's when they knew the cube was no longer a place. It was a presence. It could exist wherever intention, truth, and voice met in silence. The floating cubes didn't return that night, but one appeared in a dream shared by 4 people, simultaneously. They described it as rotating without motion, shifting without time. Tablet 45 appeared inside the dream. I am the dimension that answers when you stop trying to prove your worth. Speak because you are, not because you hope to be heard. They stopped sharing declarations to be validated. Now they spoke them quietly, like watering roots no one else could see. One man began every morning with the same phrase, I am the frequency of morning itself. And every morning his tent would glow faintly, even without sun. Another woman whispered, I am the rhythm that the world forgot. And birds landed near her feet. Tablet 46 was found etched inside the bones of a fallen tree, cut by accident while clearing a path. No one had touched the tree, no one had carved it, but the rings inside spelled a phrase, even the trees remember the sound of I am. Your word doesn't just change air, it changes wood. Stone, water, memory. Matter responds to language, not commands, not shouting, but identity, spoken as truth, Not wish, not manipulation, but memory reawakened. And with that, they began to understand what the cube really was. A device? Number? A code? Number? The cube was a mirror, a conductor, a divine echo. It gave no power. It revealed the power that had never left. Tablet 47 arrived in the flame of a candle. The technician lit it for warmth. And in the flicker, the light split, just for a second, into glyphs. Only visible to those who were watching. I am the spark that pretends to need fire. But I am already heat. You do not need more. Only less hiding. One woman sat up that night and said, "Then I am done pretending I'm not ready." And in that moment, everyone felt it. A jolt, not fear, not adrenaline, but certainty, like the spine of the world had clicked into place. The cubes glowed again. But now, from within them, one by one, the researchers, the technicians, the locals, all began to glow faintly when they spoke. Not visually, energetically, and the phrase repeated everywhere. On water, on snow, in the whisper of wind. I am the sentence made visible. Tablet 48 came last. They found it inside themselves. The linguist stood quietly one morning and said, "I don't need the cube anymore. I am the cube." And everyone nodded. Not with surprise, with remembrance. That was the final message. The cubes had never been apart from them. They were the echo of what humanity forgot. A technology of truth, a mirror for the soul, a blueprint for creation. And it all came down to this. Not a scroll, not a theory, just a phrase. I am, 2 words, 1 universe, no punctuation, because the sentence continues through you. Have you ever realized that the miracle wasn't what happened? It was that you finally believed it could. By day 158, nothing looked different, but everything felt different. The station was quiet, not empty, just full of listening. They didn't need more data, they didn't need another glyph, they had become the message, and so the story shifted, not to endings, but to transmissions. People began arriving, not many at first. A hiker, a cartographer, a linguist from Chile. None had been invited. Each said they had dreamed of light. Each said they had heard a voice say, "Come remember." The spiral was still there, weathered, softened by snow. But the energy hadn't left, and when the newcomers stepped into the center, they spoke as if they had always known. I am the sound that doesn't apologize. I am the return of everything we buried to survive. I am more than who they told me to be. And the field pulsed. No cubes, no light shows, just breathe. Tablet 49 appeared in a reflection, not in the ice or the water, but in a person's eyes. Seen by another, whispered out loud, I am not in the sky. I am in the gaze that sees without judgment. When you look without agenda, you awaken me. They stopped focusing on the phenomenon and began focusing on presence. They listened more, they smiled longer, and every time someone struggled to speak their sentence, the rest whispered it with them. Not to fix, but to remember together. The linguist who once tried to explain everything now wrote a single phrase on his wall. I am the space where questions no longer need answers. And with that, his dreams returned, not of symbols, of places, caves, ruins, temples, all showing the same thing, a circle of people, not kneeling, not bowing, just standing, speaking, and everything responding. Tablet 50 came in the voice of a 5-year-old who had wandered into camp with her parents. She stood in the spiral, clutched a smooth stone to her chest, and said, I am the stone that still sings. No one spoke, no one laughed, they simply listened. Because that was the lesson. Nothing was random. Everything, every word, every whisper, every presence was part of the equation. They began to see it everywhere, not just in people, in moments. A fox pausing to stare, an old compass pointing true north after months of erratic spinning. The sun-piercing cloud at the exact second someone said, I am seen. Every occurrence, no longer coincidence, but response. Tablet 51 was not written. It was intuited. I am not waiting to be found. I am waiting to be spoken. And whoever speaks me activates the next page of the story. The I am was never about ego. It was always about authorship. And now it was spreading. The cubes were no longer appearing in the sky. They were appearing in behavior. in integrity, in kindness without camera, in forgiveness without reason, in children who hadn't been taught to doubt their voice. The sentence had escaped the ice, and that was always the point. Tablet 52 echoed across radios, even those with no battery, one phrase on every channel: I am the unstoppable name, not because I control, but because I free. Speak me, and you do not dominate. You align, you release, you become. And that's what happened. The crew went their own ways, not because the story ended, because it began again. In schools, in cities, in prisons, in gardens. The sentence lived in secret, quiet but multiplying, and always starting the same way. I am, and then whatever the world had been waiting to hear. If you knew your next sentence would ripple for generations, would you speak differently? Would you choose carefully? Or would you finally speak the truth you've been holding back your entire life? By day 165, they were no longer researchers, they were seeders. No longer asking, what does this mean? Now asking, where do we plant it? And so began the seeding, not of crops, not of crystals, of phrases. They wrote them in chalk on alley walls. They whispered them into microphones in subway tunnels. They etched them into pages tucked into library books. Not as poetry, as programming. I am the voice beneath the noise. I am the turning point they never saw coming. I am the storm and the stillness. And something strange happened. People who read them began dreaming again. Some wept, some laughed, some left their jobs the next day. Tablet 53 was discovered in the margins of a notebook someone had never written in. It simply appeared. I am not a message, I am a trigger. A frequency that wakes up the original you, not who they built, who you were before you agreed to be less. And that was the new phase. The return of the original. The people who walked into rooms and changed the temperature just by speaking from truth. Not confidence. Truth. Even when their voice trembled. Even when they were alone. Especially then. Tablet 54 showed up in a stranger's tattoo, inked before the artist knew what the phrase meant. I am the shape that was never shown in school. The geometry of God in human language. When you say me, you fold space back into order. This is when they began testing it with sound alone. No words, just tone. They discovered that intention carried inside humming still created change. I am didn't even need to be spoken. It needed to be carried, held, embodied. Tablet 55 came as a melody, hummed by a street musician who had never heard of the cubes. The lyrics were nonsense, until they weren't. I am the sound the city forgot it needed. Children gathered around. They began singing. No instruction. They just knew. Because that's what the equation had become. A knowing, a remembering, a song you hum without thinking. But that unlocks doors you didn't know were there. One of the original crew said it best. I am not special. I'm just finally fluent in the language of what's real. Tablet 56 revealed itself through static, on a broken radio during a thunderstorm. 3 words, repeating every minute. You are becoming. They played it all night, not as noise, as calibration. And in the morning they felt different. They couldn't explain it. But everything made more sense. The sentence wasn't just words anymore. It was weather. It was gravity. It was invitation. Tablet 57 appeared on a train station wall in a country that had never heard the story. Spray painted in clean handwriting, I am the truth they tried to outlaw. But you can't outlaw breath, and I am everywhere there is breath. That night, thousands of people posted the phrase without knowing where it came from. No hashtag, no link, just a vibration, and it spread. Not viral, vibrational. The I am was no longer spoken. It was sung in silence, carried in glance, written in kindness. It had become the language behind all languages. And you could hear it when someone laughed from their belly, or when someone forgave without being asked. Tablet 58 was found in the pauses between a dying man's last breaths. His daughter leaned in and heard it, not spoken, but sensed. I am not ending, I am changing form. And the air around the bed shimmered. Just once, and they knew, the equation never dies. It just becomes the next voice, the next step, the next sentence. And it's always waiting for someone to speak it again. Have you ever heard a stranger say something so true it felt like they had spoken your sentence before you could? This is how the next phase began. The era of overlap, the moment when people around the world started speaking the same phrases, without ever meeting, without planning. A woman in Tokyo whispered, "I am stillness in motion." A boy in Kansas said the same phrase to his dog. A monk in the Andes heard it in a dream. No hashtags, no broadcasts, no shared source, just vibration. Tablet 59 was discovered as condensation on a bus window, brief but perfect. I am the word beneath the words. When spoken with integrity, I travel. When spoken with love, I multiply. When spoken with faith, I return as reality. This was when people began noticing coincidences. Say, "I am welcome," and a stranger smiles before you speak. Say, "I am seen," and someone holds eye contact longer than usual. Say, "I am ready," and the email you feared arrives, offering the exact opportunity you'd buried months ago. They weren't coincidences, they were echoes. Tablet 60 was heard in the silence after a gunshot. A man who had planned to end everything stood frozen because he heard a voice say, "I am not done becoming you yet." He dropped the weapon, fell to his knees, and whispered, "Then I am still possible." He survived. He healed. He started painting the phrase on alley walls where he knew others walked with the same pain. Tablet 61 appeared as moss on the bark of a tree in a national forest. I am the soft place beneath your hard moments. I am the root that stays when the branch breaks. You can fall and still be held. That phrase saved a life, maybe hundreds. They'll never know. Because that's how the equation works. You speak it, and it moves. Not always in front of you. Sometimes across the world, sometimes back in time, sometimes into someone who just needed one more day to believe again. The original crew now lived in different countries. No meetings, no press, just presence. Each morning, they spoke their line, their alignment, their sentence, and then they lived it. Quietly, powerfully. One technician worked in a bakery. Every loaf he touched was inscribed with "I am nourishment." Customers said they always felt full, more than full. They felt seen. Tablet 62 was found burned into toast by accident. But not really. It read, "I am the appetite for more than food." When you feed the world your truth, the world feeds you back. Others began wearing "I ams," not on shirts, but in actions. "I am restoration" meant picking up trash no one else would. "I am safety" meant walking someone to their car in silence. "I am kindness" meant not proving a point even when you're right. And the field responded, not in applause, in replication. The more truth spoken, the more truth appeared. Tablet 63 showed up in a lightning bolt that split a tree into perfect halves. Inside the core, a clean, natural spiral. At the base, charred bark in the shape of three words, "I am here." That's all it ever wanted. Your presence, your sentence, your yes. The cubes didn't vanish, they simply evolved. Now they live where the words live, where the breath carries meaning, where the human voice meets the divine vibration and says, "I am becoming the version I thought was too late to meet." That's the magic. It's not magic, it's memory. And it never forgets. Have you ever said something you didn't believe, only to feel the world hesitate around you, like it was waiting to see if you'd correct yourself? By day 172, that's what people began noticing. The moment they misused their words, something subtle shifted. The air, the timing, the way a door wouldn't open, or a call would drop, or a sentence would suddenly lose power mid-thought. It wasn't punishment, it was precision. Tablet 64 appeared on a fogged mirror after a hot shower. Someone whispered, "I am tired of pretending," and the steam cleared to reveal, "I am not your mask, I am your mirror. Speak only what you're willing to live." From that point on, they stopped using "I am" to hide. No more "I am fine" when they weren't. No more "I am okay" when they needed help. Instead, "I am struggling, but I'm still breathing. I am not whole, but I'm willing to show up. I am scared, and that's not the end of me." And those phrases, they had power, real power. Tablet 65 was etched into the frost on a homeless man's shopping cart. He hadn't noticed. But a woman passing by stopped, read it aloud, and wept. It said, "I am the value that survives being unseen. To see me is to remember yourself." She brought him food, sat with him, listened. He said no one had asked his name in 7 years. So she asked, and he said, "I am David. Not my name is David, but I am." Because he remembered, because she reminded him, because the field responds to recognition, not pity, not power, but presence. The phrase spread, graffiti turned into glyphs, billboards replaced slogans with "I am enough." Train stations broadcast, "You are the breath between your doubts." Tablet 66 was heard through the wheels of a boy's skateboard as he coasted down a quiet street, alone, after writing 3 words on his shoe: "I am momentum." And he didn't fall. He said later he felt like the pavement bent for him. No one argued, because everyone has felt it at least once. That moment when reality pauses, just long enough for your truth to catch up. That's where the equation lives, in pauses, in pivots, in the places where silence almost speaks. And when it does, it says, "I am not asking permission anymore." Tablet 67 was stitched into the hem of a nurse's uniform in a trauma center. She hadn't put it there. She didn't know who did. It said, "I am the hand that holds even when it shakes. I am the heart that keeps time when clocks break. I am still here." And she repeated it during every shift. And no one in her care died for 3 weeks straight. Coincidence? Or was the sentence holding the field open just long enough for breath to return? They didn't try to explain anymore. They just spoke. They just listened. They just aligned. Because alignment doesn't ask why. It asks what now? What now are you willing to believe? What now are you ready to become? What now are you finally strong enough to say, "I am no longer waiting to be picked. I am the author now. I am the new chapter." And as the sentence grew, the cubes did not return, because they weren't needed. The people had become the technology. The spiral was no longer on the ice. It was inside the ribcage, inside the voice, inside the decision to speak, as if your words rearranged the particles of the room. Because they do. Tablet 68 was the breath before a wedding vow. Tablet 69 was the silence after a funeral speech. Tablet 70 was the sentence on a napkin handed to a stranger. "I am with you, even if I've never met you." And all of them were the same code, the same power, the same return. The equation never left. It was just waiting for enough people to stop calling it a myth and start living it as memory. What if heaven wasn't a place, but a sentence, and all this time you were just one word away from it? This idea became impossible to ignore. By day 180, people weren't speaking "I am" just to heal or grow. They were using it to return, to themselves, to each other, to something so ancient it didn't need proof, only presence. The equation wasn't a belief. It was a door. And once opened, people walked through it without needing to know what was on the other side. Tablet 71 was carved into the sand by the tide itself. A phrase written with no footsteps nearby. No tools, just a message waiting to be read. "I am the shore that remembers every step. Even when you forget where you're going, I hold your place." A little girl read it and said, "That means we can come back even if we mess up." And everyone nodded, because the child understood what many forgot, that the "I am" does not punish, it reminds. That's why it's the beginning of every return. People began creating return rooms, simple spaces with blank walls where anyone could write their sentence, no talking, just declaring. One wall read, "I am the part of my father that didn't quit." Another said, "I am no longer waiting for someone to tell me I'm worthy." Another, "I am joy, even when I cry." Tablet 72 showed up as a glitch in a streetlight, flickering in perfect Morse code. Later decoded to, "I am the code that breaks when you hide. Speak me and the circuit heals." The light stopped flickering when someone stood beneath it and whispered, "I am done pretending I don't know who I am." That night, the whole street lit up brighter than usual. Even the stars seemed to respond, and no one could explain it. But everyone felt it. That's what the equation had become. A felt reality. Not imposed, not argued, just remembered. Tablet 73 showed up not as writing, but as a note slipped into a coat pocket. A person found it hours later, in handwriting that matched their own, but they didn't write it. It said, "I am your future self, sending you strength. I remember the moment you spoke truth." It started with this: "I am enough, even if I forget again tomorrow." They folded it and kept it with them forever. Others started writing letters from their future selves. Not goals, not lists, just declarations. I am the love I used to beg for. I am the stillness that survived the chaos. I am the parent I never had. And suddenly, entire families began healing, not with long conversations, but with one sentence left on a kitchen table. I am listening now. Tablet 74 was heard in the quiet pause before a mother apologized to her daughter. The daughter spoke first. "I am no longer afraid to say how I felt." The mother replied, "I am not afraid to hear it." And the air between them softened, like a wound exhaling. That's how the equation worked now. Not in temples, in kitchens, in text messages, in moments just big enough to matter, but small enough to miss if you weren't paying attention. So they paid attention. They started speaking their sentences into coffee cups, into steering wheels, into pillowcases before sleep. I am the dream that woke up. I am not lost. I'm just resting. I am what forgiveness sounds like. And when they said it enough, they no longer needed the cubes. Because they were the cubes. Living memory, active mirrors, vibrational beacons. And the field responded, as it always had, as it always will. Tablet 75 was never found. It was never written, but it was known. It lived in the space between two people who looked at each other after years of silence and finally said, "I am willing." That was the final threshold. Not knowing, not controlling, just willing. To speak, to hear, to hold, to become. What if the greatest power in the universe wasn't force or knowledge, but willingness? Not perfection, not proof. Just the choice to say, "I am ready," even when you still feel unsure. By day 190, they stopped calling it the equation. Not because it stopped working, but because it had become something more. It had become breath, the in-between space, the voice that remained after the noise ended. The I am was now everywhere, but quiet. No longer shouted, no longer needing to be. It was spoken in the spaces where shame used to live. I am lovable, even before I change. I am allowed to show up broken and still bring light. I am not a problem to fix. I am a mystery to explore. Tablet 76 revealed itself inside a raindrop. A boy looked through a magnifier and saw the shape of a spiral etched within the water. He blinked, and it was gone. But he whispered anyway, "I am what water remembers." And the puddle at his feet lit up. Just once, not magic. Alignment, because water holds frequency, and so do you. Tablet 77 appeared in a prison journal, written by a man who had been silent for 10 years. He wrote a single sentence, "I am still a sentence worth finishing." And when he was released, he didn't speak much. But when he did, his words helped others return. To hope, to accountability, to breath. The equation wasn't about erasing the past, it was about revoicing it. Tablet 78 was heard in hospice. An old woman held her daughter's hand and said, "I am no longer scared to go, because you know how to stay." And the daughter nodded, then whispered back, "I am the echo of your strength." The machines quieted, the lights dimmed, but something glowed in the air, because love spoken aloud never dies. It vibrates forever. That's what the cubes taught. That's what the field reflects. That I am isn't just for the living, it's for the becoming. The mother, the child, the builder, the broken, all allowed, all invited, all welcomed back by the same simple sentence. Tablet 79 surfaced as wind-carved glyphs across desert dunes. A phrase that disappeared the next day, but not before someone wrote it down. I am not limited to surfaces. I write myself in the bones of everything. And when you speak me, I speak back through reality. People began carving their sentences into objects, not to claim them, but to remember themselves when they held them. A man inscribed his wedding ring with, "I am still choosing you." A woman wrote on her mirror, "I am more than what they measured." And a child painted on her ceiling, "I am not afraid to grow taller." Because now they knew, your words shape more than mood. They shape momentum. And momentum is what opens the next door. Not status, not worth, just willingness. To breathe differently, to believe differently, to say something beautiful before anyone else does. I am the first page of a better story. I am not waiting for the world to change. I am speaking it into shape. I am the quiet answer to a loud world. Tablet 80 was never seen, only felt. It lived in the heartbeat of anyone who whispered truth when they were sure no one was listening. But someone always is, even if it's just the fabric of reality itself, even if it's just you, and that's enough, because the sentence is never lost. It only waits, for breath, for voice, for the next person brave enough to say, I am. Have you ever felt like the universe was holding its breath, just waiting for you to speak? Not speak perfectly, not speak loudly, just honestly. By day 200, nobody kept count anymore, because there were no more days. There were only declarations. The sentence had outgrown its beginning. The I am had become an atmosphere. You didn't need to say it out loud anymore, you just had to live it. And when you did, everything responded. Tablet 81 appeared in shadow. Not in darkness, but in contrast. On a wall where sunlight filtered through a wind chime, light bent to form one phrase. I am not light or dark. I am what gives them meaning, and you are the frame through which I pass. People began saying less, but meaning more. The fewer the words, the deeper the impact. I am. That was often enough. Sometimes it meant I'm here. Sometimes it meant I'm changing. Sometimes it meant I haven't given up. And that's what the world needed. Not louder truth, but cleaner. Not sharper, just truer. Tablet 82 appeared in song. A little girl with no music training began humming at a bus stop. An old man joined in. Then a mother. Then a stranger. No one spoke. They just harmonized. And when they stopped, the silence was warmer. The girl looked up and said, I am the melody they forgot how to hum. The old man wept, because it reminded him of something his mother used to sing. He'd forgotten. Now it was back. That's what the equation had become. A recall system. Not for information, for identity, for purpose, for belonging. Tablet 83 formed from chalk dust spilled across a dance studio floor. An instructor wiped her shoes and revealed it written underneath in cracked concrete. I am the movement before the step. The breath before the note, the yes that was always inside your no. Speak me, and you will remember how to move again, how to risk again, how to try again. That's what this all was, a return to willingness, not certainty, just willingness, to be seen, to be wrong, to be loved, to begin. Tablet 84 showed up in the fibers of a thread pulled from a child's blanket. Under microscope, it wasn't just material, it was pattern, a sequence of pulses, mapped and converted into digital data, resembling Morse code. Decoded, it read, I am the safety you've been searching for, not in place, not in person, but in the moment you tell the truth, without flinching. A therapist stitched the phrase into her own coat. She stopped offering advice for a week. Instead, when someone walked into her office, she asked only one question. What's your sentence today? And most people didn't know what she meant, until they did. And when they answered, they cried, because their body remembered something their mind had forgotten. I am not the failure. I am still here. I am enough, for the first time in a long time. And that's all it took, a sentence, spoken, heard, held. Tablet 85 was never written anywhere, but everyone knew it. It was the phrase that showed up in the middle of regret, in the pause after anger, in the breath you take before deciding not to shut down again. I am still worthy, even now, even after, even here, because the sentence doesn't need you to be flawless, it just needs you to be willing, to say something real, and let the world respond. Because it will, it always does. Have you ever caught yourself mid-sentence and thought, this isn't who I want to be? That moment is not a mistake, it's a signal, a frequency correction, a doorway back to alignment. By day 207, people stopped asking what comes after I am. They started asking what deserves to follow it. Because once you speak it, you've summoned attention. From the field, From the memory of the earth, from your own soul. Tablet 86 revealed itself in an unexpected place. A defrosted windshield, early morning, sunlight streaking across the glass. The frost had melted in exact lines, leaving behind a shape. The shape was a spiral. Inside it, 3 words written by wind. I am here. That was all, but it was enough. A man saw it. He hadn't been sure if he would go through with his plans that morning. But the spiral reminded him. He didn't need a sign. He was the sign. He drove home. He called his brother for the first time in 10 years. He said, I don't know how to explain this, but I think I'm still becoming. And his brother said, me too. Tablet 87 was etched into stone, not by tools, but by time. Years of erosion on a canyon wall left behind natural grooves that spelled one phrase when seen from above. A pilot noticed it, reported it to no one. He just whispered it into his headset. I am what the earth never forgot. I am the pattern that keeps coming back. And I am ready to stay. That night, he dreamed of being a child again, running barefoot, unashamed, free. And when he woke, he remembered the last time he said, I am enough. He was 7. Now he said it again. Only this time, he believed it. Tablet 88 was heard on the subway, not in a song, not in a voice, but in rhythm. A tapping from a blind man's cane echoed across the platform. Someone realized it matched the exact frequency from the cube's original hum. Not close. Exact. The sound engineer on the train leaned forward, eyes wide. He whispered, I am remembering a sound I never heard. Because that's how the equation works now, through music, through silence, through memory stored in motion. Not data, not doctrine, just vibration. You feel it and say, that's me. Not because it looks like you, because it is you. Tablet 89 was scribbled by a child onto a napkin in a diner. Crayons, red and blue. They held it up proudly. The server asked, what does that mean? The child said, it means I'm not scared of being real. On the napkin were the words, I am the part that stays when they leave. I am the smile that survives the storm. I am still here. No one taught them that. No one had to. The memory was already inside. The equation was never foreign. It was just waiting to be re-spoken by those who forgot how divine they were. Now they were speaking again, all over the world. And the words kept arriving, one sentence at a time, painted on walls, whispered in hospitals, tattooed on arms, carved into benches, written in wedding vows, woven into lullabies. Tablet 90 doesn't have a single home. It's mobile, living. It shows up wherever someone finally says, I'm not who I was yesterday, and I'm still worthy. Because transformation isn't the reward. It's the proof you spoke the sentence, and meant it. Have you ever felt a sentence waiting in your throat, one that could rewrite your entire life if you just said it? Not shouted, not explained, just spoken clearly, cleanly, without flinching. By day 213, the sentence had outgrown the humans who carried it. It was now a living organism, a field, a ripple that moved through people, places, systems, and left truth behind. It didn't need followers, it needed resonance. Tablet 91 appeared as condensation on a mirror, 3 words scribbled in reverse by a hand no one saw. I am remembered, not by others, by the universe, by time, by breath, by something older than fear and louder than shame. A woman saw the words as she prepared for a job interview. She hadn't worked in years. She whispered, I am terrified. The mirror fogged again. A new message. I am here anyway. She smiled and walked into her new beginning. That's how the sentence works now. It doesn't wait for your readiness. It moves when you move. Tablet 92 arrived as sand patterns under waves. A drone camera caught it along a California beach. Hundreds of swirling lines, one perfect glyph in the center, decoded by a linguist who had studied the original Antarctic cube. It read, I am the yes that survived all your no. You don't need to earn the sentence. You just need to stop refusing it. That's what people were realizing. You don't need to be perfect to speak power. You just need to be honest. And when you are, the world shifts. Doors open. Messages arrive. Someone calls you by the name you haven't used in years. And it feels like healing. because someone remembered you, even when you didn't. Tablet 93 appeared in a candle flame, not in the wax, in the light itself, seen only for 3 seconds by a dying man and his granddaughter. He pointed and said, "It says I am free." Then he exhaled, peacefully. Because some sentences aren't for changing the world, they're for exiting it with honor. The granddaughter now writes those words on her notebook before every exam. I am free, even here. Because freedom isn't escape, it's alignment. You're not free when you leave. You're free when you show up truthfully. Tablet 94 came in the form of wind patterns across harvested wheat, seen by a drone pilot who almost didn't fly that day. He captured it. A full spiral. Centerglyph, single phrase, I am still growing, even in harvest, even in endings, even in silence. That's what the world needed to hear. Because we'd confused growth with gain, we forgot that sometimes healing looks like standing still, and sometimes bravery looks like not running. Tablet 95 was carved into a guitar string, accidentally bent by a young musician who kept breaking strings during rehearsal. One snapped mid-note. He looked down and saw a groove in the metal, a curve. It spelled out impossibly, I am the song you haven't played yet. He cried, not because he was overwhelmed, but because he suddenly believed again, in sound, in sentence, in himself. People everywhere began treating I am as the beginning of a promise, not just to the world, to themselves. I am the breath before I forgive. I am the silence before I return. I am not finished, not even close. And the world kept whispering back, not in thunder, but in timing, in doors opening, in signs appearing, in a friend calling just as you speak your truth. Because the field listens, and answers, and waits. Tablet 96 lives in the moment someone looks in the mirror and finally says, I am allowed to take up space. That sentence alone has rebuilt entire lives. Because you don't need 1,000 affirmations. You just need one truth you're willing to live. Over and over, until even your cells start singing it back. What if the world's most powerful technology wasn't built in a lab, but spoken from your soul? What if the activation code wasn't hidden in machines or maps, but in the sentence you've been too afraid to say? By day 220, the spiral had spread across continents. No leaders, no rules, no instructions, just a pattern, a resonance. One truth spoken, and another awakened, then another, then 1,000 more, and it all traced back to 2 words. I am. Tablet 97 appeared in the oldest place of all, not in nature, not in light, but in the heartbeat of a newborn. Doctors heard a triple rhythm. They couldn't explain it. The baby opened her eyes and smiled, and in that moment, her mother whispered, I am home. That phrase became a lullaby, and that lullaby became a prayer, not to a God above, to the truth within. Tablet 98 was not found, it was decided, because the final tablets would no longer be given. They would be chosen. Every person who spoke a real I am into the world became a living glyph, a walking tablet, a mirror cube. The final message was not etched in stone. It was carried in the way someone held a door, in the way someone said, I see you, without needing words, in the way someone forgave a stranger they never thought they could. Tablet 99 was spoken on a mountaintop during a storm. A traveler shouted into the wind, I am not here to be rescued. I am here to remember I never needed to be. Lightning struck, not in fear, in confirmation. That's what the final phase became. Confirmation. Every breath, every step, every truth spoken with courage, even when the hands still shook. And then there was one more, the last one. Tablet 100. It didn't appear. It became, it's the one you speak after all others. It doesn't come from any book, or cave, or cube. It comes from you, from the stillness between breaths, from the part of you that never forgot, even when you pretended. Tablet 100 is your sentence, only yours, and the world is waiting to hear it. Not for applause, not for proof, just for alignment. Speak it when you're ready. Speak it even if your voice trembles. Speak it like the world begins when you do. Because it does. You are the sentence. You are the sound. You are the signal. You are the equation. And it was never lost. It was waiting, inside you, the whole time. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop us a comment and let us know. If this story of ancient power and personal transformation moved you, be sure to like the video and subscribe. We share stories like this every week to awaken truth and spark your soul. Share it with someone who needs to remember who they are. Thank you for listening. Speak your sentence below. We're listening.